Gang, welcome back to Between the Sharks on this very gloomy winter day. I got a story. Happens to the best of us from time to time, but it's never good when it happens. I had to get towed. And I don't like it. I'm going to tell you all about it while I get after it because, well, we got to get after it. I was on my way to the movies, old downtown. Had left work, was cruising along the highway. Everything was going fine. Got to the exit ramp. Things were kind of okay. Then I tried to make a left-hand turn, and I had no power steering. And I thought to myself, well, maybe I'm out of power steering juice because, well, it's a Chevrolet and it's old, so it leaks. So I'm working my way to the parking deck, and the power steering has gotten low before, and usually it kind of groans and gives me a lot of warning. But all of a sudden, I had no power steering. Zilch. And if you've ever driven a four-wheel drive truck, power steering's super helpful. So I figure, fine, I'll just pull into the parking deck, I'll park it. I had power steering fluid with me because I always do. I'll top it off, we'll take a look. And unless, you know, my fears were that I had blown a power steering line at that point because it was unusual, like I said, for the pump not to make some kind of a noise before, you know, kind of showing some sort of effect. So I cracked the hood open, and from about this perspective, I see a jet of coolant just spraying onto the motor, creating a ton of steam because obviously everything was hot. And boy howdy, it was basically like a super soaker, right? Because we've got, what, 13-pound cap and a tiny pinhole in the radiator just blasting all the belts. Probably, maybe, I think why the power steering wasn't working. It may have been low on fluid, but that probably did the trick. Now, the thing about this is this radiator is about 2 years old. Basically, I got the truck running and I put a brand new radiator in it to make sure the transmission would cool and everything else. And the pinhole, like I said, is firing at the engine. So I don't think it's likely that I hit a rock or something, jumped up, because then it would have been spraying out, is what I imagine and surmise. And we're about to pull this thing out and see if we can find any damage on the front, or to see if this is actually a manufacturing kind of defect that caused the radiator to form a pinhole. Now, fortunately for us, gang, this is a relatively easy radiator to replace. A couple screws that hold the shroud on, a couple, you know, kind of bolty magoos that hold the radiator in at the top and slides right out once you get the hoses undone and the transmission cooler lines undone. They're really the worst part of this, the transmission cooler lines. I'm pretty sure I dumped the coolant all over that parking deck, and I did refill it with some water because obviously, because I had indeed had to drive it out of the parking deck because you cannot lift a four-wheel drive vehicle with a tow bar, and you know, can't really put this on a flatbed inside a parking garage, which means I'm not really concerned about spilling whatever's in the engine out because it's pretty much been emptied twice already and everything I filled it with was water. But that's why we're doing it out here and not in there. So let's get this lower rad hose off. This is a pretty easy radiator to remove, like I said. I just got to get these 4 bolts out of the top. This top piece will come off and we'll lift it out. I got the transmission cooler lines off, which is just unthreading cooler lines. Hit my knuckles on the fins of the radiator, which is a requirement of every radiator job or fan replacement ever. So the thing about it was, it happened Friday night, and Friday night in Atlanta, it happened to be in the upper 60s, and it was nice out. So had it happened when I had a further drive left to go, I probably would have run this radiator dry and potentially really damaged the motor. So that's pretty good. I didn't freeze while waiting for a tow truck. The worst thing that happened was I had to miss most of my movie because I was out loading a truck, you know, onto the back of a flatbed while my girlfriend watched the rest of the movie. So the thing about this is, it could have happened by some weird puncture, maybe like something bounced around in there, got whacked by the fan, and sent it into the radiator, but as soon as we take it out, we'll get a close look to decide if this is, you know, actually a manufacturer failure, or if this is something that just, you know, happened by driving. The short version of it is, though, the radiator was injured bad enough that there was no way to keep coolant in it to drive it home. Like, no way. I had about 20 miles to go, and the rate at which it was spraying it out was significant. As I was waiting on the side of the road, hood up, just kind of, you know, alerting people that the car was not going anywhere. You know how many people stopped? 0. Anyway, here we go. All right. Interesting. So here's the thing. There's the hole. Hole's right here, and it was spraying something fierce, and I just don't know what the so that's it right there. So I don't think I was paying that much attention to this thing, but these are the core rows running right to left. And right there, it has a significant hole in it. That looks like a puncture wound of some kind, not like, you know, rust or anything else. So I don't really know what to make of that. That feels, I don't know how it happened because that's the inside of the radiator. So this chunk right here was inside the car facing the engine and somewhat protected by the shroud, right? So whatever hit it must have come up off the road and then hit the fan or something and bounced back and caused this damage, which is, I mean, you can see that obviously the radiator now would drain from the top down to this point, so it couldn't hold coolant, and once it was pressurized, it was spraying this stuff out hot at 13 psi or more. But that's weird. I kind of expected to see more of a manufacturing separation just because I figured this area of the radiator was protected. Anyway, I called the auto parts store, had them order me another one, and I casually asked, I said, are these things warranted? And they said lifetime, so I'll write it back up there, see what they say about it. We'll get a new one and put it back. I don't think I can call this a problem attributed to a manufacturing defect or bad new parts. I know that's all the rage right now, especially with the camshafts, but this seems like maybe it was really incidental. In fact, looking right there, it looks like something else hit it. I don't see any other damage, but all right, let's go get a new one, slap it back in. So they warrantied it out, which was super nice. Saved a couple $100. These run about $200 a piece. I've never seen that kind of failure, but I'm guessing, you know, it got nailed by something. Fortunately, these are very easy to install. The disconcerting part is I don't really know what happened, you know? Come on, little rubber guy. Do my bidding. I mean, before these get really nailed in, I do kind of prefer to go ahead and start the transmission cooler lines just because they have the least room to flex. And so if the radiator's really mounted in there, I don't know, maybe it's just me. I'm always afraid I'm gonna cross thread stuff, which is gonna ruin the radiator most likely. But it may ruin the lines as well. I don't remember where I got this transmission like cooler line set from. It was supposed to fit. It is a piece of garbage. But because it's been made to fit at this point, I'm just not ready to endeavor into replacing it with something that I hope fits better. The lines just, they don't even make any sense. Like, they're not even close to making sense. It's always the nerve-wracking part to me, putting a wrench on it for the first time. You never know. Is it just tight or is it cross-threaded? Everything's tightened down. The transmission lines are probably gonna leak a little bit, but I kinda tend to, on my first startup, get them pretty tight and then wait till they leak and tighten them till they stop because, you know, I'm pretty sure with these new El Cheapo radiators, I'm threading into aluminum. So stripping that's easier than I want it to be. Just gotta put this back top radiator holder inner thing on and the shroud and we'll be good to fire her back up. Well, that is after we had coolant because it's bone dry. This thing, it just has this top piece that bolts on 5 bolts. I've lost one, so we're gonna call it 4 bolts. And she's back in. Really swapping this thing out takes about an hour. Try doing that on your 2022 Chevrolet Blazer. All right, found the real good stuff. I always buy the full strength. Why buy something watered down already? Typically I would just add water, but it is December. We will see some cold days here. So this probably ought to be more than enough for our climate. So I'll top it off with water after I fill it up with whatever's left in this jug. I feel like that'll be the perfect amount. All right, gang, we're gonna do some kind of standard new radiator startup procedure here, which is simply, I'm gonna fire it up with the radiator cap off. I've got transmission fluid standing by, and I've got coolant standing by. The reason we start with the radiator cap off is we can see when the thermostat opens and it'll start to like move coolant, and it will draw some coolant into the engine that isn't there right now, and we'll need to top it off. It also helps kind of purge the system, lets the air out instead of building pressure immediately. And yeah, we can make sure everything's flowing. We'll be checking for leaks at the same time. I'm expecting a little leak from the transmission cooler lines, and we will get it warm enough to check the transmission fluid, because we probably lost a bit as we changed the radiator, because there should have been some in the transcooler, which makes me think, if that pinhole had hit the transmission lines, I could have done severe damage even faster. All things said, I got lucky. I got very lucky, even though a bad thing happened. Whoop, we're already down. Just drinking it right up. Are you in full party mode? Gang, she drank a lot of water right out the gate, but let's go ahead and fire it up. Put it in neutral, that kind of jazz. You can see the fan spinning. It's not hitting anything. That's good news. Now, I'm not seeing... I was expecting a bit of a transmission leak, but I'm not seeing it. But maybe it's just really low. Otherwise, you can see how much that already dropped down. Let's top it off. Sort of see we got a little bit of movement. We'll get an air bubble every now and then, which is normal. Basically, this is letting all the air bubbles out, which is a good thing to do, because really, this cap holds pressure, so there's really nowhere for the air to go, and the air will basically compress, leaving bubbles still in the system. So we may spill a little here, but that's all right. There we go. It's for sure open now. Most of the bubbles will purge out. We'll top her off, and we ought to be good to go. Radiator's back in. Does not appear to be leaking. We'll keep an eye on it for the next couple of test drives or commutes to work or whatever. Obviously, we will keep coolant with us, and we will keep transmission fluid just in case we have a bit of a leak that we don't realize until later. And on that note, this thing did indeed leave me stranded, but I got lucky with every single piece of this adventure. First of all, this didn't seem to happen until I hit the exit ramp. From the exit ramp, I only went about a half a mile into a parking deck where I saw the problem, and there was more than enough coolant to spray everywhere still in the truck. If this had happened on the highway and I'd gone another 3 or 4 miles down the road, I could have caused serious damage overheating this engine. Also, if whatever poked that hole in it hit part where the transmission coolant lines ran through to cool the transmission fluid, I could have drained the transmission and caused myself many thousands of dollars worth of damage. The weather was nice, I was in a safe place, and they even warranted the radiator. So, frankly, I can't call that a manufacturing defect. I just can't. So, would rather have not waited for a tow truck, but considering all I had to do was replace a radiator and not a transmission and not a blown motor, we'll call that a big time win. Yeah, just think about it. It's been so rainy here. If that happened in the rain, I might not have even seen the steam if I was driving down the highway. So, all right. Well, thanks for watching Between the Sharks. Good luck on your projects out there. We will see you next time. We have got to get back on this Model T. Got the engine hoist out here, ready to go to get that engine in the right place. It just has been eluding me. The time to get back onto this. Anyway, you guys know how that is. We'll see you next time. We'll get after it.